Christmas has come, and so many shall call peace upon earth and goodwill to all. Snow covers the ground, a chill on the breeze, lights cover each building and glitter in trees. Games to be played, for all to compete, baking fresh cookies, the air becomes sweet. Exchanging the presents so drastically sought, then happy at last at the joy they have brought. Joining together and singing in rhyme, sharing the cheer, it's a wonderful time. But sadly you see that the holiday cheer is used by one person to only spread fear. A dark, sordid fellow, with a plan very cruel, practiced each year so many he'd fool. He makes special gifts, it brings him such joy, and then sends them out to a girl or a boy. But you've heard this before, though not quite the same. He comes once a year, and you know his name. The malevolent giver, the generous taker, that black-hearted demon, the old Merrymaker. Our tale begins, 7 decades have passed. The 50s, oh my, time sure does move fast. An orphanage now, the set of this tale, where a great festive horror did shortly unveil. The residence, though, was a wonderful place for so many children, whatever their case. A strong and old building, filled with comfort and cheer, such kindly attendants who wash away fear. Somewhere to live, safe and happily, until the day came they'd find a family. In keeping the season, the housing was dressed with such decorations that had all impressed. The hallways did glitter with tinsel and such, ornaments, lights, it was almost too much. But despite all their efforts to bring in the season, the children felt down for one lonely reason. For those not adopted, it can feel like forever, and this time of year can be a saddened endeavor. But the sadness within would eventually shift at the festive arrival of one special gift. Upon Christmas Eve and early one morning came a knock at the door without any warning. A matron named Joyce went to answer the call. When she opened the door, there was no one at all. Quite taken aback, there was nobody there. She took a step out and was caught unaware. Just at her foot, in a great festive wrapper, was a sweet little box, a present quite dapper. There was but one sentence written in a small card, a gift for the children when life feels hard. A kind little gesture she felt in her heart, and soon it was time for the kids' day to start. The present was placed just beneath the tree, so when time for gifts, right there it would be. The morning went well, though still somewhat blue, the children pushed on, and cheer slowly grew. For on Christmas Eve they opened one of the gifts, one for all to share, so not to cause rifts. The time had soon come, the children elated, as under the tree was one that now waited. They tore up the paper, not one was a slacker, and to their surprise, it was a nutcracker. From its head to its feet, and from side to side, a beautiful piece, it could not be denied. It was almost perfect, just one thing out of place, for there was no mouth on the nutcracker's face. An opening, yes, but no lips or teeth. To miss such a detail, it beggars belief. Perhaps it was rushed and finished too soon. No name or address, just a hallmark or rune. It wasn't so bad, this feature disjointed. The matrons hoped that the children weren't too disappointed. Much to their surprise, the reverse had come true. They loved the nutcracker, the sheer joy it imbued. They took it in turns to each have a play. Mouth or no mouth, it was here to stay. This Christmas was set, of gifts there were more, but this little surprise they simply adore. Though how could they know that despite of each smile, their cheer would soon spoil and turn into bile. The day started well, with all getting along, laughter in air, the festive feeling was strong. But as time went on, there started a change in the children's behavior and things became strange. Where before they all played, each moment a thrill, as the day carried on, they grew quietly still. The laughter and joy which bounced off the walls slowly died down, silence filled up the halls. They drifted about with not much to say, all children kept close, in a group they did stay. An odd situation, just how things had turned, this soon had the matrons feeling rather concerned. The matrons tried asking, were the children all right? They were given short answers, as if riddled with spite. Questioning now just what had gone wrong, they noticed the Nutcracker always passing along. Surely it's not the cause of this taint, it was only some wood and the odd spot of paint. But then a dark thought had come into mind, that the gifts they were given may not have been so kind. What if the paint used for the attraction had some sort of substance to cause this reaction? Just to be safe, and as part of a test, they'd removed the Nutcracker, it was all for the best. But as they approached to take it away, the children did scream and react in dismay. The matrons tried hard to keep everyone calm, but the children lashed out as though to cause harm. After much grabbing and fighting galore, Joyce had won it and marched to the door. She loudly exclaimed if they'd not stop this attack, then she'd throw it away and they'd not get it back. But if they behaved and tried to be good, they might get it back. Was that understood? Upon hearing this, the children did hush. Their angry tirade was gone in a rush. The silence was biting within a short while, all staring intently as though she was on trial. Joyce took her leave. To her bedroom she walked. In frustrated confusion, to herself she talked. The children had never acted out just like this, such aggressive behavior they could not dismiss. But then she felt bad, somewhat out of touch. Perhaps just this year had all been too much. She got to her room and placed it up high, but as she moved away, something caught her eye. Upon the Nutcracker she carefully peered, where there on its face a small smile appeared. It was faint at the time, a smudge and no more, a big toothy grin now staining its jaw. Had it always been there? Her mind did insist, but then she was so tired it could have been missed. She brushed it aside, there were duties to do. To bring back some joy, they'd surely pull through. Perhaps they'd play games and see how they fare. She vacated her room and left the Nutcracker there. The day carried on with the pop of a kettle, hot chocolate and games, and the mood it did settle. Shortly came night, and with a big day ahead, preparations were made, and all went to bed. Feeling tired and drained, and the building locked tight, Joyce made for her room to sleep the whole night. She readied for bed, and felt rather pleased that the drama before had been thoroughly eased. But before she could sleep, as much as she could, she turned to her shelf where the Nutcracker stood. A strange little thing, but she wouldn't worry. She'd check it out later, there wasn't a hurry. She turned out the light, rest quickly took hold, wrapped in a blanket to fend off any cold. But sleep wouldn't last, early hours came around, and she slowly awoke to an odd little sound. A clacking of sorts, or small tapping noise. It must just have been the girls and the boys. They must be excited for Santa, of course, so she got out of bed to locate the source. Joyce tried for a light, but it wouldn't switch on. She tried for another. The power was gone. But in her side table was a handy flashlight, which lit up the way for her still sleepy sight. Away through the halls, she followed the clacking. Her patience for this was certainly lacking. Whoever it was, there'd be nowhere to hide. the winds carried snow which blasted outside. For some unknown reason came an unsettled feeling. To find who this was, she was suddenly reeling. But just up ahead, the clacking grew loud, where the light couldn't reach within night's darkened shroud. Then in but a moment, a quiet took hold, leaving Joyce somewhat fearful of what may unfold. She took a few steps, fear struck at her core, when she saw the Nutcracker just stood on the floor. Joyce was dumbfounded and worriedly scoffed. Approaching the figure, she held it aloft. Its motionless eyes were too far from soothing. Things only got worse when its mouth began moving. She dropped it at once, fear violently stir, the clack of its mouth as if laughing at her. Joyce took a step back as this madness unwind, when she then heard some footsteps approach from behind. She quickly turned round, when caught in the light, something so awful it stilled her with fright. One other matron, who could now barely stand, she gargled and sputtered and reached out her hand. This poor unknowing soul, red stained down her gut, blood poured from her throat, which had been nastily cut. She fell to the floor, Joyce fearfully vexed, but the horror continued with what appeared next. The children appeared with a harrowing feeling as they crawled on the floor, the walls and the ceiling. Out from the dark, like a slow rising flood, drooling and growling, stained all through in blood. The horrible sight, as though trapped in a dream, awoke when the children howled a nightmarish scream. Rushing towards her, Joyce broke from her stun. Turning around, she started to run. Running and running as fast as she could, the danger she faced not misunderstood. She dreaded to think just what they would do, where just up ahead, the door came into view. Closer she got, when a bang made her freeze. The door opened wide and rushed in a breeze. Joyce stood in place, heart-stricken with dread. She could barely make out someone just up ahead. The thick, heavy snow, spurred on by a gale, surrounded a figure in a dark, blurry veil. From what she could see, they were slender and tall. An old suit and hat were catching snowfall. She narrowed her eyes, they were open a crack, but her focus was broken by a sting in her back. Another sharp sting, Joyce fell to her knees, catching her breath in a cold, biting wheeze. She barely could move, the pain was so raw, she gathered her strength from her place on the floor. The figure was speaking, but Joyce couldn't hear just what he was saying as the children drew near. But as they approached, they simply moved past. Her heart and her mind were still racing fast. She watched as they moved towards the dark form, when just at her feet came a feeling quite warm. Joyce tried to turn back, avoid what would transpire, where approaching her now was a fast-growing fire. She tried to stand up, but this led to a fall, so with nothing else left, she started to crawl. The children outside gathered at the doormat. The figure raised up his hand to then tip his hat. The children and stranger moved off predisposed. Joyce continued to move, but the door slowly closed. Joyce crawled to the exit for her own dire sake, but the fire took the building, consuming all in its wake. The news about this incident of this evil child theft had shaken all the nation, leaving so many bereft. The orphanage left in such disarray, the children not found to this very day. So be on guard this Christmas, do not be made a fool, another reason to remember this one important rule. Beware the Merrymaker, his cruel and evil ploy. he'll take away the children with every twisted toy. Good day, I'm Jar19 and thank you for listening. So what did you think of Merrymaker 2? He's a fun character to bring back to the channel, even if it is only once a year. Hopefully the video has added a bit of a chill to your festivities. Speaking of which, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. I hope that you've been celebrating brilliantly and getting some well-earned peace. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then perhaps subscribe, leave a like, and if you're feeling particularly cheeky, maybe even a comment. I do hope that you'll join me again. Stay safe, sleep well, but remember, here we make monsters.